No matter your age, your plan for retirement can start today. From the News Channel 5 Network, this is the Retirement Report.
Good morning. Welcome to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. All right, we're going to be talking about risk today. One of those things that come into it, 4 common risks that can devastate your retirement, okay, such as longevity risk. This is one of those, in fact, that is the greatest of risks. You may be familiar with things that you've dealt with, like inflation risk. We're concerned about inflation in terms of how it's going to impact our dollars, the spending power, if you will, of our purchasing power of our dollars. So one of the things that comes in with inflation, when inflation is low, as it has been, one of the difficulties that goes with that, lower interest rates, lower inflation, is that we're seeing also low savings rates. So it makes it very difficult when we're trying to find a safe place to put our money to make anything on our money. And the next thing, even when you look at what you can get on a CD, for instance, that's still not enough to stay up with inflation as low as it is, and with taxes. All right, so we're losing the purchasing power. We see this erosion. We see when we go to the grocery store and we go to check out, right? You don't have as many groceries to carry out for as much money as you left behind. Have you noticed that, right? What the bill is that much? So that's inflation, and it sneaks up on you. It's kind of like the silent killer of your finances. That's one risk that we have to be concerned about. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to have to make more on our money to stay up, to keep our purchasing power up, so that as prices go up, the amount of money that we have to pay for those increased prices also goes up. Now, the difficulty is it's hard to do that in safe ways, isn't it? Like if we want to put it in, what are those safe things? We talk about the 3 worlds of investing many times on the show, right? In that first world, things like savings accounts, checking accounts, money market accounts, CDs, savings bonds, treasuries, fixed annuities. All of these are things that are safe. They give us guarantees of interest. They give us guarantees we'll get our principal back as well as that interest. There may be penalties if we take out, for instance, a 5-year CD or a 5-year fixed annuity. We know that if we cashed it in early, we're going to have some kind of interest penalty. All of these are common factors that we see. What's the difficulty? Even things like a 10-year CD, only about 2% interest. A 10-year treasury, maybe 2% interest. So where do we put our money to stay ahead of inflation and taxes? This is one of the dilemmas that comes with planning for retirement, whether you're saving for retirement or in retirement and trying to make your money last. So inflation risk is one. Market risk then comes to play, right? Because what do people do when they're trying to avoid inflation risk or trying to get ahead of inflation and taxes? They typically take more risk with their money by investing in the stock market. Now we've got market risk, all right? Whether it's stocks that you own, where you own a piece of the company, all right, with a stock, you've purchased a part of that company, and you're going to share in its whether it goes up in its growth, or if it goes down, you're also going to share in that loss of value. So that's one of the risks with markets. Bonds, same thing. If I loan the company, which is what a bond is, loaning a corporate or government entity my money for some specified period of time for a set amount of interest, which I'm going to get paid to me about every 6 months. Now, you may own these in mutual funds, these stocks and bonds. It still works the same within those, though it may look a little different on your statements in terms of what you see. But at the end of the year, right, when you're looking at how did my portfolio do, sometimes even when it goes down, you're still going to get that 1099. We're all seeing them this time of year, and it's going to show us what did we get on long-term gains. So even if we didn't sell anything within our mutual fund, maybe they did a lot of trading. And what's going to happen is that's going to generate potential taxes for us in the form of gains. Maybe they've captured some gains, maybe they've had some losses. That's all going to be reflected on our 1099, as well as dividends and interest. So these are some of the things when you're looking to stay ahead of inflation risk, and we go into market risk, so we have to take another risk to try to avoid the first risk. And now that adds another part to it, especially as you get into retirement. There's this a unique to retirement type of risk called sequence of returns. In other words, if I retire and the market goes down within 5 years of my retirement to 5 years before retirement, in other words, to 5 years after retirement, that can have a huge impact on whether or not I'm going to run out of money during my lifetime. which brings up another risk, and that's called longevity risk, okay? And longevity risk is probably the multiplier of all other risks. So if you throw in all the ones I mentioned, inflation, market risk, if you look in interest rate risk, the fluctuations there, if we look at health care costs, long-term care, all these different risks that we're going to have and costs that we're going to have in retirement, longevity is the multiplier of those risks, right? Because what happens if I'm 66 when I retire and God forbid I die 3 or 4 years later? Well, those other risks aren't going to have any impact on my retirement, are they? But the longer I live, and what do we know? For the average 65-year-old, for male, life expectancy is 84. For female, 86. So what does that tell us? That's the average. That means half of us are going to live longer than that. In fact, 25% are going to live well beyond age 90. So now if you're retiring in your 60s and you're looking at 20, 25, possibly 30 years in retirement without a paycheck, what are you going to do? Okay, we're looking at Social Security as one of those. Maybe you have a pension, but obviously savings are very important as well. Have you put money away in your 401k? Have you got enough that you're going to be able to retire on and provide the income you need to maintain your standard of living and quality of life no matter how long you live? And you see how that works. The longer you live, inflation becomes a bigger issue for you, doesn't it? Market risk, as I mentioned, in sequence of returns, that becomes a bigger deal. Market crashes, all of a sudden, that's a big deal when you're in retirement and you're pulling money out of your retirement accounts. You don't want to have that drop, and what happens? Do you have to take less income? Okay? Or are you going to have to reduce your lifestyle? Because if you don't do one of those, what's the other possibility? Right, you start using up your money faster and you potentially run out of money. So how do you protect yourself against all these risks? Well, that's the kind of thing we're going to be talking about, as well as one of the biggest expenses that goes with this. When you get into these risks, you also have to deal with the cost in retirement as well. Okay, what are your housing costs going to be? Health care costs are a big part of that. And what is one of the biggest resources we're all going to have? Social Security. Okay, how do we make the most of that? When it comes to Social Security income, when's the best time to file? So think of that, and this is where it gets a little bit, when you're talking about Social Security, I'm going to share with you a couple of things here. Let's see, here we go. All right, so on Social Security, one of the things that we get into that you have to weigh in for each person when they come in, they ask me, well, when should I take Social Security? When's the earliest I can take it? I'm going to show you some key ages here. This is the retirement income challenge, all right, that we all face. So we'll get this slide up. Here's what we're going to be looking at. Age 60, what these different ages mean. So at age 55, if you have a 401k, a retirement plan, and let's say whether you're retiring or that's the age at which the first time you can take money out of that without that 10% IRS penalty. So that's age 55. That's important sometimes when it comes to planning in terms of your retirement and what you're doing, whether you keep your money in the 401k and for how long. See, at age 59 and a half, that's the age at which you can take money out of your IRA without that 10% IRS penalty. So if you were going to need money out of a retirement account, you don't want to roll it over into an IRA. In other words, if you're going to need that money between age 55 and 59 and a half to take some money out, you don't want to roll it into an IRA right then, do you? Or at least you need to leave enough in there to be able to take that income. Now, we'll get into some of the differences as far as whether you should or shouldn't move your 401k. There's all kinds of news out there on that, and we'll cover that later. For next age 62. This is the first age at which you can take Social Security. All right, now I qualify. That's the earliest age I can take Social Security, but is that the best time to take Social Security? Sometimes people are very concerned, well, will it be around? I put this money in, boy, I'm going to get it out while I can. Well, there's some things you need to ask about whether that's the correct time to do it. When's the next time? Well, you can take it any time after that, but the next age that's real important is age 66. That's called your full retirement age. Now, for some, if you're younger, that could go up to as high as 67. But for most, going and I'm talking to right now, if you're heading into retirement, age 66 is your full retirement age. Now, there's some key factors about whether I should take my Social Security at 62 or 66. A big part of the analysis I do every day with new clients that are coming in is we go over for them and answer that question, 62, 66, or possibly even 70, or somewhere in between. If you're going to be working past age 62, there are rules that could take back those benefits based on how much money you make. So normally we say if you're going to work past age 62, definitely postpone taking retirement until then. Now, what are some other things? Well, you look at your own health, okay? You look at your family history, you know, longevity. Do people tend to live longer in your family? The break-even point between 62 and 66 is typically in that 78 to 82 range, and it varies according to the person. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes, rarely, a little bit more. So if you want to find out more about that, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a quick break. All right, when we come back, I'm going to delve into more about these key ages, what it means to you, and how you in fact can make the right choices, because it can be worth tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars to you over your lifetime. Join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.